an inspiration for many in broadcasting, regardless of motorsport discipline, and set the bar high for everyone in broadcasting and motorsports journalism. We send our thoughts to Ken's family, friends, and the NASCAR community. Ken Squire's contribution and voice will live on forever. We will have a full tribute on Grid Tonight this coming Wednesday. With me today, we have Ben Schneider from lastcar.info and Ben Schneider on YouTube, Isha from Racing with Isha, Kobe, and making his Grid Network debut, Joey Rasul from Rasul Racing. Joey, welcome to the Grid Network team.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it.
We're very excited to have you here, and we're very excited for our Patreon subscribers for keeping us on the air, calling the show. Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, they invest in us each and every month. Once we can hit $500 a month, we'll be sending folks to the track in 2024. And if you want to buy a cup of coffee or a YouTube super chat, and especially to any person of the Grid Network team, just mention their name and we'll forward the funds and they'll thank you on the air. So be sure to buy our valuable team, including Joey, a cup of coffee or YouTube super chat. Show your appreciation to our Grid Network team.
We could use some coffee for this these late night races.
I think a lot of folks on the East Coast, which 3 of our team members are there, you're going to need some coffee. But if the race turns out to like how qualifying, it might be an exciting one, Kobe.
Yeah, Joe. Looking at what's going on in Vegas this weekend, the long-awaited Las Vegas Grand Prix is here, and it got off to a rough start, to say the least. And this got underway during free practice 1, and a loose water valve cover damaged 3 vehicles. Carlos Sainz ended up getting the worst of it with a destroyed chassis, power unit, battery, etc. Yeah, there's a whole list. Ferrari had to go to another chassis and power unit, and will still have to serve a grid penalty. Team principal Fred Vasseur called it unacceptable for F1 today. The loose water valve hull cover ended FP1 after only 8 minutes. FP2 started at 2:30 a.m. local time. Yes, 2:30 a.m. local time when a lot of people are asleep. And this was without fans in attendance. The roads had to be open for daily traffic by 4 a.m. local. Fans who attended with a single day ticket were offered a $200 voucher at the Las Vegas Grand Prix official store, but fans must pay for shipping out of pocket. And we're gonna bring Joey, Isha, and Ben on for this. How disappointing is it for F1 to have such a start after all this hype? Did they do enough for those who attended? Start with you, Joey.
It's tough to say because honestly, there's been a big fumble at the beginning. This is the first time this track has existed, let alone being run for F1. There is no way to predict the amount of downforce that these cars are going to put on local roads, and a manhole cover is what slips through the cracks. That's happened at so many other tracks that we've seen, and not just street circuits, but purpose-built racetracks in the last, 5-6 years. We've seen that happen at other tracks as well. Logistics-wise, I'm forgiving a lot because it is the very first year. It is a town where just on that strip alone, there are 20, 30 major businesses that all have a say and all have a stake in exactly how this plays out. I at the very beginning was very mad about where the start finish straight was. I was thinking, why is start finish straight not on the actual strip? And then I realized it's because F1 bought that land where the paddock building is. So that is a permanent structure. So they're able to have the permanent structures there that are going to last for this 10-year deal. And that is why the start finish straight is this tiny straight away from everything else. So there's a little bit of like a grain of salt every time you see a piece and realize like, oh, there is actually a lot of thought that went into this. It just did not culminate very well. Hopefully we get some good results, and hopefully the stumbling of the first few days is going to become a distant memory. But right now it's pretty painful for people who are there.
Yeah, Joey, I think you said it pretty well. Not much to add there. Obviously, for the F1 fans who are watching in, it's disappointing, but for those who attended the who attended the practice sessions and, spent all that money, the thousands, hundreds of dollars on those one single day passes, and for them to only be given $200 and to only be told that you can spend it on F1 merch. Like, you can't it's not $200 that you can use towards anything else, towards covering transportation costs or whatever. But I think that obviously it's a huge disappointment to Formula One fans, especially the American audience, which I know we'll talk about later as well. But also, as Joey said, you at first it's very angering to think about, but afterwards, when you think about all the thought that's been put into the race and logistically speaking, how hard it was to set this up, you sort of do realize that it's not really their fault. It was something that was out of their control. So you can't be too overly critical of it when you're looking at the situation.
Yeah, I won't add too much because I know we're going to get into the follow-up and can Formula One recover from this if we have a good race. That's a couple of questions from now, so I'll save that for a little bit later. But I want to touch on this $200 voucher just for a second. People talk all the time about how ridiculously expensive Formula One merch is. I don't know, $200 might get you one, maybe two hats, might get you a polo. I mean, it's just it's a slap in the face. It's an insult to everybody that waited hours for FP2 to start, and then right before it was about to start was told, hey, you've got to clear out the grandstands. Our staffers are pushing up against overtime hours. We're not going to be able to have security in place. You've got to leave. It's got to be behind closed doors. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And then to add insult to injury, this is a Las Vegas Grand Prix official store. It's not like the Formula One official store. It's the Las Vegas Grand Prix store. It's online, and you have to still pay for shipping out of pocket. I mean, it almost feels like it's such a minimal effort. Maybe it would have been better if they had just been stoic and not done anything at all. I mean, that's how insulting this is for the people that paid literally thousands of dollars in some cases to travel to Las Vegas, to come here to see this race, and to be greeted with 8 minutes of practice and wait hours in the middle of the night to be treated like this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, Ben, totally agree with you, and I encourage you all to go read Jeff Gluck's article on the Athletic. Jeff Gluck spoke to 3 race fans who were attending the day one practice session, how they felt, and one of the biggest things I was able to take away from that is that those people, although it is just for one day, they work very hard for their money to make this one trip while they couldn't afford to stay all 3 days. Just one will just be satisfying enough, and for them to work very hard at their day job to save up money for this big trip just to see F1 cars on track and to be treated this way, it was a giant slap in the face, and I really feel for those folks. And as Joy and Isha were saying, I guess you do have to kind of forgive it, forgive some, since this is their very first time, because we've seen times in the past when Formula One, other races here, they've gone to street circuits on debut, and things didn't work out well, and they learned from their mistakes, and then it was smooth sailing after that. So for the sake of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, I really hope they're able to learn from everything that went wrong, and they're able to recover from this. And in regards to the loose water valve hole, it's I think it's totally unacceptable that you allow this to happen, because they have to do a track inspection, and I have no idea how this was missed. And in Formula One statement, they said it was a single water valve hole cover, but if you follow a lot of reporting in the media, there were about like 20 to 30 that were unsecured. And on a street circuit, when the FI is doing these track inspections, this stuff needs to be caught beforehand, not during a free practice session when Carlos Sainz and Ferrari are experiencing the worst of it. Yeah, so like I was saying, I just really hope that Formula One is able to learn from this major blunder. I have no idea how this track was allowed to pass inspection, and I'm sure they're going to be getting to the bottom of this. And I know a lot of people out there, it's no secret, some people want to see this event fail because they don't like it at all, but I'm not that way. I want to see the Las Vegas Grand Prix succeed. I want it to become a staple on the American motorsports calendar. And while Formula One did not get off to a good start, I thought day 2, once we got away from some of the fallout from day 1, I thought day 2 went relatively well. With a full free practice 3, an exciting qualifying session. I thought that's exactly what Formula One needed after all of the chaos and drama that happened on day 1. And we're on day 3 now, the final day of this 3-day event, Las Vegas Grand Prix. Sure, Formula One is hoping that they get a good show tonight. And one person who is not having a fun time in Las Vegas is Max Verstappen. He's made a lot of comments that I'm sure y'all would consider negative. The beginning of the race weekend, Max said that this was a 1% race and 99% show. I'm sure y'all probably saw that opening ceremony where they had all those concerts. Max Verstappen said that he felt like a clown standing up there because he really felt like that it was not necessary. He doesn't really appreciate the spectacle F1 organized when they race in the United States. And he doesn't like how most of the fans were partying and getting intoxicated at the track in the heart of Sin City. And that's basically, what Las Vegas is. Max has also been very critical of the track and said he's learned nothing new. Then on the FP1 mess, he said if he were a fan, he would just tear down the whole place. And Isha, starting with you this time, do you think Max is crossing the line here, being the world champion of the sport, acting like the Las Vegas party pooper instead of, completely embracing the idea like you've seen that Lewis Hamilton or Charles Leclerc do? And do you anticipate more boos from American race fans like we saw at COTA?
Kobe, I personally don't think that Max obviously has to embrace whatever's happening in Las Vegas. He doesn't have to shout out from the rooftops that he's enjoying it or take part in all of the festivities and events. But as a professional, you don't go and, in such a negative way, overly criticize the race as well. I think that he's obviously allowed to have his opinions on the matter. And if he doesn't like events, he doesn't like the fun, he just wants to focus on the racing, that's totally fine. There's other drivers that are like that. But I think that he really did cross a line talking about it in such a negative viewpoint, and with the fact that the weekend isn't even over yet. If he talked about this later on in the off season or something, I think it would have been better. But while the weekend is going, for him to say such negative comments, I think he's definitely crossing a line, and he's for sure going to be hearing a lot more boos when he wins. Notice how I said win, not if, but tonight when he wins, he's definitely going to be seeing a lot more boos, not only because he won, but also because of the negative attitude that he's had this whole weekend so far.
Well, Yusha, I think I'm going to have to disagree a little bit. And again, with all due respect, I don't really like these kinds of questions because I feel like one of the most common complaints that we have with today's young drivers, I think particularly on the NASCAR side of things, but maybe a little bit in Formula One and perhaps IndyCar as well, is that today's drivers are just so boring. They're so vanilla. They don't show enough personality. They don't have strong enough opinions on what's happening in the sport. Now, you may not like Max Verstappen's opinion. You may not like his attitude. You may not like the dominance that he's shown. And Isha, to your point as well, I think it's Charles Leclerc's on pole. I think that automatically equals a Max Verstappen win, right? I think that there's a very good chance that that's going to be happening tonight, or this morning, I guess, for us here on the East Coast. But I don't feel like it's right to come down so hard on Max Verstappen for these comments when, in the same breath, a lot of fans today are lamenting the fact that the perennial most popular driver in NASCAR, Chase Elliott, isn't necessarily known for having such a great outgoing personality and engaging with thoughtful insight and opinions and analysis on the sport. Again, Max Verstappen is doing so in a little more of a negative light here, but I don't think that, let me just say this. I'll take that any day over, the Chase Elliott's of the world that aren't going to offer any kind of opinions at all. So I understand why Max is polarizing. I certainly think that he's going to get booed this weekend if he wins again. But again, I think that's more of an American sports thing as well. America doesn't like to see somebody win 15 out of 16 races and a formality, if you will, a boring, predictable procession in terms of who's going to be winning all these races. I think that's probably more where the boos are coming from than the negative comments that Max has on this race, which, let's be honest, based on what happened Thursday night into Friday morning, I think are going to be shared by a lot of fans, if anything, as well.
That's a good point. And I think that what we're seeing is just kind of a result of who Max Verstappen is. Max Verstappen is literally bred to be a world champion. And he is someone who thinks about nothing but racing. So when he's won a championship so far off, he's in a situation where this is a little more spectacle than race. This is not one of the traditional races on the calendar. They're trying to drive up hype. They're trying to drive up interest in the sport in a championship that is already over, both in the drivers and in the constructors. He doesn't have the competition that he wanted from like something like a 2021. And he's kind of looking out and seeing that there are no more worlds to conquer in a way. And, he's looking at what is left in a season when he wins so early is all this pomp and circumstance. That's all that's there for him. So I think that's more what he's lamenting. And Las Vegas, the spectacle that it is, a heightened version of that. If we had races like Spa at the end of the year, I don't think he would have anywhere near as much of as a complaint. But Las Vegas, there's no way to do it without making a spectacle of it. That would feel hollow and strange. So I think it's stacking on top of each other. It's adding. I wouldn't say insult to injury, but it's definitely compounding.
I think y'all made some really excellent points. I also wanted to point out some more comments Max Verstappen made in an ESPN article. He said one of the biggest things for him, he said that the Las Vegas Grand Prix is really lacking a lot of emotion and passion. And when this race was announced, a lot of people have been like that this could eventually become another crown jewel on the schedule, just like winning the Monaco Grand Prix. And when Max was asked to compare Monaco and Las Vegas, he basically said it didn't even come close. He said Monaco is like the Champions League, and he said Las Vegas is like the National League. And if you follow soccer in Europe, that the National League is a lower tier of English soccer. So Max doesn't really rank this high at all. And Ben, like you were saying, we need to be appreciative, as spectators of the sport, of people like Max Verstappen. While you may not always agree with what he has to say, you have to appreciate the fact, that he's willing to voice his opinion. He's not like some drivers out there, who would rather pacify the higher ups and not say anything to criticize the sport. It's not Max Verstappen's job, as the world champion of Formula One, multi-time world champion of Formula One, to openly be their PR person. That's someone else's job. That's not Max Verstappen's job. So I really do appreciate his honesty here, rather than just fall in line and try to push the message that Formula One wants to hear. Yeah, I know he'll probably get booed at some point later tonight. Whether they're upset because of his comments or because he's probably going to win again. And American race fans, they like to see parity. They don't like to see the same winner over and over again. And I want to ask you this follow-up, Ben. Assuming we get a smooth Grand Prix later tonight, will Las Vegas still be remembered for this bad start, regardless of the type of race we get? And could it undo some of F1's progress with American race fans?
Well, I'll take the second part of that first. I think it already has, to be quite honest. I think that the fans that had this race brought to them in Las Vegas, the fans that traveled all the way to Las Vegas, the casual American fans that are hearing about this because it's one of our home races and it's this big spectacle, it's this big deal going on in a major city in the United States. I think they tune in, they see this, and after 8 minutes of FP1, that's probably the extent of their time as a Formula One fan. I don't see very many of those fans that have been treated so poorly with the circumstances at the actual Grand Prix, or those that maybe just flipped on FP1 because it happened to be on ESPN2 late at night and only got to see 8 minutes. I don't think that there was really anything that's going to draw them to come back. And again, if anything, there's probably enough that's going to push them away and turn them away for the future. I still think when you look at the demographics, NASCAR obviously still reigns in the total viewership, but I know F1's 1849 demo is very strong, and that is perhaps a sign of a trend and a sign for the future, and that NASCAR needs to do a little bit more to, kind of copy what F1's done and being able to bring in a younger audience. But stuff like this certainly doesn't help. And I mean, they are trying their damnedest, it would seem, based on how they've handled the circumstances of FP1 this weekend, to throw all the progress that they've made over the last several years with Drive to Survive and bringing in a second and now a third race here in this country. It seems like they're trying their best to throw it all away. And I think that's really unfortunate because, like you, Kobe, I don't sit here, taking a victory lap because I've wanted this event to fail. I want it to be as successful as any other race on the calendar, if not more so, because of the importance of what this race means to this city and to this country. But I mean, again, it was just such a farcical evening on Thursday and early morning, I guess, into Friday. I had to double check the timestamps on Jeff Gluck's tweet when he said, for the East Coast fans who don't know what's happened, or maybe just waking up and are finding that FP2 is about to start, and then he had to emphasize in all caps start. I mean, it just has gone so poorly and so badly that I think it's going to leave a sour taste in so many people's mouths, regardless of what happens the rest of this weekend. But I will say this, though. I just watched the Unlapped show on ESPN's F1 channel. And forgive me, I forget which panelist was saying this, but somebody brought up the point that Americans also love a great comeback story. So if we get something spectacular, I know I joked on Grid Tonight that it would be an unbelievable scene if Logan Sargent somehow found a way to winning this race or onto the podium. And he does start sixth, by the way, so maybe that's a much more likely outcome at this point than we would have thought it was going into this weekend. But, you know, if Sargent somehow takes a shock podium, if Haas somehow take a shock podium as the American team, if Lewis can come back from, you know, the middle of the grid and work his way up through the field, and there's this great last lap battle with Verstappen or Leclerc or somebody, if it's anyone other than a Max Verstappen win, to be quite honest, based on how this season's gone, you know, no disrespect to Max, but I don't think it would be great for the sport if it's another 30-second Max Verstappen win based on everything that's happened this weekend. If we get another one of those anyway, if something like that happens, and the casual fans that probably weren't going to tune in for FP1 or FP2 anyway, were only here for the race, if that's the lasting impact that they have, then I do think there is still something that can be salvaged from this weekend among those fans. But the fans that were at FP1, that watched FP1, that tuned in for that were at the track, I'm afraid that a lot of that progress that you've made is probably been lost to the point of no return.
I think that's a pretty solid point. And, you know, I'll go even further to say that this race has never been about the American fans. And the fact that it goes on at 1 o'clock in the morning for the East Coast is proof of that. We have plenty of other races, you know, like we talked about the race back in the 80s in Las Vegas being so hot, and they were trying to combat the desert heat. Fast forward to now, they were talking about this being one of the coldest races that was ever going to happen in F1. It seems like the weather has changed from that, but a 10 p.m. local start was never about it just being cold enough to race, you know, because you could have done that at 6 p.m. It would have still been dark. It's getting dark around 4:30 in Las Vegas right now. So you would have had all the spectacle. You would have had everything that you wanted. The 10 p.m. start is about making this somewhat palatable for European audiences as far as a time slot. And that is what's creating all these logistics issues with Las Vegas. Las Vegas is, you know, needing to open the roads at 4:30 or 4 o'clock or whatever it is. And they have this time window that they need for the European audiences. So trying to correlate those two is part of the juggle here. So they've lost some will with American audiences, but like I said, that was never their concern going into this to begin with.
Yeah, great points from both of you guys here. You know, I don't have much to add, but I will say that I think that as long as tonight ends on a good note and we see something exciting happen in the race, as Ben said, you know, something of a big battle between Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen, or a non-Max victory, or just something really big, I think that it could sort of erase what happened at the start of this weekend. And I think that that's what we need if Las Vegas wants to be considered like a success. And if people don't want to remember how the first two practices went. But also to answer the second part of the question, coming back to it, I think that what's happened so far this weekend, besides the quali, has definitely undone some of the F1 progress that we've made in America by increasing more audience and viewers. I think that it's definitely added a negative light to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And as you guys all said, you know, in order for all of this to be reversed, in order for the American audience to take this away from a positive viewpoint, I think that tonight has to be really big and much better, just so that it can basically cover everything that's happened so far.
Well, Alicia, I'm not sure if we can completely erase what has happened this weekend by a good Las Vegas Grand Prix that based on all the different scenarios you laid out, an exciting battle, a non-Max victory, Max actually having to fight for a victory, or maybe we get lucky and get a Logan Sargent podium on home soil. That would certainly make the American crowd really happy. It might, regardless of what type of race we get, it may not completely, make everyone forget about what happened to start off the weekend, but it'll be a good point for them to pick up the pieces and try to make this event better for next year. And I also want to read a comment from that Jeff Gluck-Argo I was talking about, from 43-year-old Tyler Thompson from Phoenix. And based on what Tyler said, this is what I am worried about when it comes to undoing the progress that Formula One has made with the American audience. It says that Thompson said that the entire experience left a big sour taste in his mouth. And I'm quoting directly from Tyler, who said, F1 has always had this air of elitism where they don't give a you-know-what about the average fan or the people in the paddock club. But if that's really their deal, it really makes me rethink things. And Tyler went on to say, frankly, I don't even think the racing is good anymore. I was just hoping the spectacle would be kind of fun, but now I don't even want to support them and their company if that's how they're going to act and treat their fans. So what he's basically saying is like basketball, when you dunk on somebody and you raise your hand down like this and hit them with the too small. This is how, you know, the average, you know, like blue collar worker feels about, you know, Formula One. That elitism is, you know, is what really turns it off. And what did Lewis Hamilton say in 2020? Cash is king, and it couldn't be more true based on what you saw this weekend. It was very disappointing how those fans were treated. I'm hopeful that Formula One at some point is going to come around and make this right. Probably not, because, you know, they didn't even get an apology in the statement. I know Andrew Benson from the BBC said the reason why Formula One didn't come out and apologize because they were concerned about the legal aspect of the situation. It was just an unfortunate thing all around, and the best thing we can do moving forward is to end the weekend on a positive note, given all of the dark things that have happened so far. And something else, you know, like the fall related to the fallout that happened on track. The stewards were trying to find a way not to apply the penalty to Carlos Sainz. You know, it was really no fault of his own, but the grid penalty is still set to be handed down. In 2004, Jeff Gordon hit some loose concrete at Martinsville Speedway that ended up damaging his car. At the time, you know, NASCAR didn't allow any repairs under the red flag, and many thought it should have been allowed since that wasn't Jeff Gordon's fault at all. So, Joey, do you think the FIA should make an exception for Carlos Sainz?
All right. Well, prepare for some bias here, because, you know, I'm wearing a Carlos Sainz shirt, you know, smooth operator over here. Carlos Sainz, my absolute favorite driver on the grid, and I 100% think he deserves this penalty. So the reasoning is because he is not getting penalized for the car breaking. He is not getting penalized for changing parts. He is getting penalized because Ferrari does not have any parts left in their allocation. You have multiple parts throughout the season. You're allowed to swap parts. There's no problem with that. And the proof of that is Esteban Ocon, who also hit a manhole and is not getting this 10-place grid drop because they had parts within their allocation or were able to repair the parts that were damaged. So they are not past their allocation. This is not a penalty that is about what happened in Las Vegas. This is a penalty about what has happened over the course of the season, and Ferrari has not been able to stay within that allocation. Now, the allocation itself is its own separate thing, right? You know, we've been talking about this allocation for parts. I don't remember the specifics of each part off the top of my head, but it's been getting smaller and smaller. It's gone from, you know, 6 engines to 4 engines to 3 engines to whatever it is right now. And we've been getting more and more races every year. So it's harder and harder to stay within that allocation. And it almost guarantees that anytime a problem like this occurs, it's going to be some kind of grid drop, especially this late in the season. But we have heard hide nor hair of Alpine's issues with this. They also had to replace a monocoque and other components as well, and they have not gotten that same penalty. So I think that's the proof right there for me.
I sort of disagree a little bit on this. I understand what you're saying with the allocations and all of that. And obviously, when you bring Esteban Ocon into the mix, he's obviously not being penalized because he doesn't have a problem with the allocations. But considering that it is the second last race of the season, and that it's because of something that was out of Carlos Sainz's control or Ferrari's control, I personally feel like they should have found a way to make an exception in this case. And you know, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I think that obviously there's a lot more to it. There's different sides or different ways that you can look at it, but I think that they should have found some way to make an exception because it's the second last race of the season, and at this point, not many of the teams have any of the parts left that they need. So I think that something else should have been done about this, or the penalty should have been changed because it's really going to throw him from second place all the way to 12th place. And I just feel like that's a huge, huge penalty for what happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, Joey, it's not that I disagree with the points you're making about the allocations, and Ferrari maybe should have left themselves a little bit more breathing room so that they didn't have to find themselves in a position to take this grid penalty on with just a couple of races left in the year. It's that the reason that we're having this discussion is, to Isha's point, something that was completely out of his control, completely out of Ferrari's control. And I also feel this way based on a statement from the stewards. I just want to read for everybody here. Accordingly, the mandatory penalty specified under Article 28.3, apologies to any Falcons fans watching, of sporting regulations must be applied. The stewards note that if they had the authority to grant a derogation in what they consider in this case to be mitigating unusual and unfortunate circumstances, they would have done so. However, the regulations do not allow such action. Are you kidding me? You are the race stewards. You are the ones who have ultimate authority here in this situation. So how can you sit here with a straight face and say, yeah, well, we know that it wasn't your fault. We know that it was something out of your control. But the letter of the law that we have here says that we have to go ahead and give you this penalty that we feel bad giving you, but there's nothing. I mean, that to me, just, I don't even know what we're doing here. Well, I don't know what to say to that. This is a situation that, as we talked about at the beginning of this show, is something that should have been caught in track inspection. It's not Carlos Sainz's fault. It could have happened to anybody that happened to go over that manhole at that time and got it loose and caused a $1 million repair bill to that Ferrari and caused them to miss practice time. And now to add insult to injury, they're getting a 10-place grid penalty on top of it. I get what you're saying about the allocations, but I just feel like that's very, very harsh to say the least. And they probably should have found a way to say, hey, this is an extreme circumstance. We're going to allow you to take on a new component without dropping you 10 places down the grid, which, to Isha's point, again, it was a front row qualifying time. And now Carlos Sainz is in the middle of the pack down from P2 all the way to P12. It just seems very, very harsh to me.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if Carlos Sainz can try to make his way up towards the front to try to salvage something after a good qualifying effort. And after all the drama and controversy that's been happening this weekend, there is a race. So let's talk about that. As we've been saying, Charles Leclerc starting on the pole. Sainz would have been second, but he's starting in 12th place due to this penalty. And this allows Max Verstappen to be on the front row with Leclerc. George Russell and Pierre Gasly starting third and fourth. Both Williams are starting in the top 10, actually top 6 with Alex Albon in fifth and Logan Sargent sixth. Sargent is plus 40,000 for anyone wanting to take him for the win in Vegas. These Vegas odds are really crazy compared to Max Verstappen at minus 190. Isha, what should we expect in the Las Vegas Grand Prix from Logan Sargent and Alex Albon? I was really surprised by the pace of the Williams this weekend.
Yeah, Kobe, me too. I was really surprised to see them doing so well, but I guess it's up to the track and the fact that maybe the car suits this track. But I think that if we take a look at the quali from last night, I think it gives a very good idea of what today's race is going to look like. I think that the cars that did well in the quali are the cars that are going to do well in the race as well. It's not going to be like one of those races where, quali is very different from the actual Grand Prix itself. But I think that we can expect some really good things from the Williams. I think that especially with Alex Albon, he's going to stay and finish in the top 5. I think that Logan Sargent could be, I would say, top 10. He's probably going to be finishing the top 10 as well. He will drop down a few points, max maybe top 12. But I think that overall we can expect a really good performance from the Williams. And I think it is really surprising how well their car has been performing in Vegas so far.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was shocked. I would say I was a little bit surprised, but I just think back to the beginning of the turbo hybrid era in 2014 when Williams started partnering with Mercedes using their power units. Mercedes obviously had the strongest engine back then when these current regulations first came into effect, and they were able to even flex their muscles a little bit and beat Red Bull or beat Ferrari in 2014 and beat Red Bull in 2015 and finished third in the constructors those 2 years. Williams always seems to have excelled on tracks like this that have long straightaways. And we've been talking all weekend about, this Las Vegas track and the cooler temperatures and how it's going to be difficult to warm up the tires. I think if there's any team that can play that to their advantage a little bit better than everybody else, it's going to be a team like Williams. And again, a little bit surprised that they ended up as far up the grid as they did, 5th and 6th. I was expecting them to be borderline, making it out of Q2, getting into Q3, but then probably being on the back end of Q3. I didn't expect this. 5th and 6th for that team is absolutely incredible based on where they've been this year and the last several years prior. I think we still have to kind of be in a little bit of wait and see mode for the race. But I think that, when you look at how far up the grid they are, it's certainly going to be a disappointment if they don't come away with a nice solid haul of points to assist them in trying to hold on to the 7th place in the constructors, which again, based on where Williams had been since 2018 or so, that would be a tremendous result for that team if they can hold on to that spot that they have right now.
Yeah, that would be great if Williams can end up getting a double points finish here in Las Vegas and another points finish for Logan Sargent on his home soil. That would be, as I've been saying, it would be very exciting for American racing. I'm sure everyone's going to be paying attention to his progress throughout the night. And looking at this Las Vegas Strip circuit, the track favors teams with lower downforce, allowing Williams to have both cars in Q3. Kevin Magnussen and Valtteri Bottas also make Q3 in the top 10. Hamilton's up to 10th because of Sainz's penalty. Sergio Perez is 11th. The king of the streets magic seemed to run out for him. And Lando Norris down in 15th. It was a horrible qualifying day for McLaren. Ben, is this set up for an intense opening lap with all these drivers trying to work their way up the field?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be very intense on the opening lap. And like you mentioned, Kobe, you've got 2 drivers that are in a heated battle for second place. I know that it's not the championship. It probably doesn't mean quite as much to a guy that's won 7 of them already. But for Pecco in particular, this has kind of been the white whale, if you will, for Red Bull. They've done everything in their history and everything in just the not too distant past with Max's championships the last several years and breaking all sorts of wins records and podium records and all sorts of great stuff. They've still yet to take 1-2 in the constructors. They came very close last year. Checo's trying to close the deal for them this season with how dominant their car has been, but he struggled a little bit in the middle of the season and is trying to find that form again. Now he's stuck back in the midfield, trying to work his way back up. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that second place battle in just a moment here, but I think that's just one element that you've got going on in the midfield as well. You've got the Williams starting up quite a bit further up the grid than they're used to, obviously, like we were just talking about. The McLarens have the opposite effect. They're further down the grid than I think Lando Norris in particular was certainly hoping for. So there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of variables going on in the middle of that starting grid. I think it's going to be a very chaotic opening lap, and hopefully everybody gets through the first turn cleanly and we can have a great race from there.
Yeah, we're in an interesting spot here because that run down to turn 1 is very, very short and it's a very tight turn. Outside of that, though, the opening lap, you've got Hamilton, Sainz, and Perez all around that 10th spot, which they're all going to have some fast cars. That could, Sainz particularly, going to be able to come up because he's proven that car has pace. Whereas Hamilton, struggled with straight line speed last time out, and he's qualifying down in 10th this time out. Perez has had some aggressive starts, but ultimately, tends to lose out on the first lap. Lando Norris coming from 15th, when that car has been ahead of the Mercedes, all we heard from Hamilton was that car is a rocket on the straights. That could be because Hamilton's car was actually just having some trouble on the straights, but his teammate is up in P3. So this we'll see what the setup changes are on the Mercedes. Maybe they're just not getting it in the window. Maybe they figured it out and it's going to be a rocket come this evening. I really think that as much as the first lap could have some chaos, the real chaos is really coming from the pit stops. We're talking about potentially a four stopper. Some have even been talking about, with the way these tires are wearing and the way these tires are working out. We've got teams that fire up their tires very well, like Ferrari and Haas up at the top. So I think that if there's going to be any chaos, I don't think it's up at the front. I don't think it's, the top five. It's going to be the back of the grid and the mid pack for sure in lap one.
Yeah, there should definitely be a lot to look out for on this opening lap. People are going to be counting down the hours and minutes, leading up to lights out, and away they go, as they say. And one key battle that we're going to be looking at, second place in the driver's standings. If Lewis Hamilton does not gain 8 points or more on Sergio Perez, Checo will clinch second place in the drivers' championship. Perez will also be on the same row as Hamilton. Two key passing zones are turn 5 and the end of Las Vegas Boulevard on the strip. Joy, does Hamilton have a chance of keeping his second place hopes alive, or does this favor the king of the streets?
He's got to outscore Checo by 8 points. And actually, this is a bit of a misnomer, because if he outscores Checo by 8 points, he has to win in Abu Dhabi and Checo has to DNF, which that is so much further out of the realm of possibility, especially this year, in a year where Max Verstappen is so dominant and that Mercedes is not fighting the way it has been in the past. So he really needs to win by, I believe it's 14 points. He needs to beat Checo to keep that second place hope actually alive. So I think this is Checo. I think he's going to squeak by the skin of his teeth. It's going to be close. I think Hamilton's going to gain more points this weekend and at the final race, but I think Checo is going to walk away with it.
Yeah, questions like this are always a little tricky to answer because things can change very quickly in Formula One or in most motorsports as well. And I think I'm going to have to agree with Joey here. I think that it's going to be too hard for Lewis Hamilton to make the points necessary in this race and then as well as in Abu Dhabi next weekend. I think that this season it's Checo taking it in second place. I think Hamilton's going to have to wait till next season.
Well, I've said all throughout this year that, as disappointing as Checo has been in qualifying, a lot of times he can still make up spots during the race and come home with like a 5th or 6th place finish, if you will. In that case, Lewis Hamilton starting, in a similar position is going to have to do similar things, working his way up the grid. If they can't work their way that far up the grid and they both end up, 7th or 8th, there's only 8, 6, 4 points available, depending on which spot you fall in on the back half of the top 10 there. That's how much he needs to outscore Checo by in the first place. So if Lewis comes home on the back end of the top 10, it's going to be over from there regardless of what Checo does. I think there's an outside chance that Lewis will have a mathematical chance at second place going into Abu Dhabi. But to your point, Joey, it would be a situation where he's got to win, set the fastest lap, and Checo would have to DNF or have such a bad race that he doesn't even score points. So I think realistically speaking, as long as Checo can just bring the car home the next 2 weeks, not take any unnecessary risks, if he just comes home with a 5th place finish here and a 6th place finish there, I think it's pretty much game over for Lewis Hamilton in second place. But it is a little bit telling that, as frustrating as that Mercedes W14 has been this year for Lewis Hamilton in particular, that he's as close as he is right now to a driver who is driving the same car that Max Verstappen's won, 15 of 16 races with, 10 in a row. And give Checo credit. He's won 2 of the first 4 races this year. I think it's very easy to forget that at this point in the year. We thought very briefly we might actually have a legitimate championship battle between our top 2 drivers here in this ultra-dominant car. And then, of course, Max Verstappen went on his winning streak and put an end to those doubts if we ever had them in the first place. But to answer the question, I think it's a very slim chance. It's a mathematical chance, but as long as Checo just keeps the car clean, I think he's probably going to have it wrapped up.
Yeah, true that. And another great points battle that we're watching is for 4th place. Fernando Alonso at 198, Lando Norris at 195, and Carlos Sainz at 192. Joey, do you see a clear favorite of who'll leave with 4th place in the points after Las Vegas?
Well, so this is the thing. I think Sainz can come back on this. He's proven that the car is very, very fast in Las Vegas. And to that allocation point, he's taken on new components. So this car is theoretically, we don't know what components went on, theoretically in a better position reliability wise to score points. Now, Ferrari always has the potential to pull a Ferrari. So that could be what undoes this opportunity. But I think Sainz historically has been someone who scores his points in the second half of the season. And we saw that coming back from the break and him going into back-to-back podiums and a win. So he is always a kind of late game racer, I think. And he could definitely sneak his way back up to fourth.
Yeah, if this was any other race weekend at any other Grand Prix, I would have said that it'd be Norris leaving in fourth place. But seeing how the McLarens have not been doing too well this weekend and how the track doesn't really suit their car, I would say that if it's down to Alonso and Sainz, if Ferrari manages to not mess up their strategies and Carlos can overtake all the cars ahead of him, I would hand it to him then. Because I personally feel like, as Joey mentioned, all great points, how they've got the newer parts. So technically speaking, their car should be performing better then. But there's still chances where he can mess up or not. Ferrari can struggle with their strategies, which is a big problem that we've seen happening in Ferrari this past season. But if you take Norris out of the pick and it's just down to Alonso and Sainz, I think that Carlos is going to leave with fourth place.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Carlos Sainz is probably in the best position. They have a good car that works well at this track, just as well as it worked on the streets of Singapore. And yeah, it's a tall order, thinking that Ferrari's strategy is going to go well, because typically when the races fall into their hands, strategy ends up messing them up, and it's game over from there. And we'll see if Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, if both those Ferraris can have a good day for the Scuderia and the Tifosi, big Ferrari fan base. And yeah, looking at McLaren, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri. Not a good time out there on the Las Vegas Strip. And Zach Brown was bringing up the point of the budget cap that they have now in Formula One, and how they decide what type of tracks they're going to invest in the wind tunnel at, try to get their car to work at the certain tracks. And Zach Brown was basically saying, they spend most of their time on the higher downforce tracks, since there's more of those on the schedule than the lower downforce tracks like this Las Vegas track. So that's probably a good reason why we're not seeing McLaren, up towards the front of the grid like we've seen in recent races, and now towards the back of the pack in the midfield, gonna have to try to fight their way through the pack. So it very well could be a really tough Las Vegas Grand Prix for McLaren. And now looking at the constructor standings, Williams has 28 points, AlphaTauri 21, 16 for Alfa Romeo, and 12 for Haas. Logan Sargent with 1 point so far. If he ends up finishing sixth or better in this race, he can move up in the standings several points. And Ben, for our last question of the F1 segment, I'll start with you. Considering that Abu Dhabi, season finale is next after Las Vegas, does Williams risk more to gain more points, or treat it just like any other race is Vegas? Some people have the mentality of going big or going home.
Yeah, I know you're in Las Vegas, but I mean, again, I would be thrilled to see a Logan Sargent podium. I think for the US F1 fans would go crazy for that. But this isn't a coin toss between 15 points for a third place finish and 0 points, which is what, I know it sounds harsh, but it's been the Logan Sargent experience up until Coda this year. And that's not entirely his fault. I know he's not driving the best car on the grid, even though Alex Albon has certainly pulled his weight and picked up a nice haul of points from the team. It's his first season, it's his rookie year. He's not used to being in a position to fight for this many points. So I kind of feel like if you're starting in sixth, that's a great goal. I mean, if you had told them that they were going to finish fifth and sixth going into this weekend, I think Williams would have signed that in a heartbeat. Now that you are fifth and sixth in qualifying, maybe there's this idea that, maybe we risk it all to go off strategy and maybe find ourselves in a position to fight for a podium here. But if we do that, maybe there's also potential that we could drop further down to 8th, 9th, or 10th, or maybe even out of the points entirely. I don't think you want to do that either. I think if you're Williams in this situation, you try to bring the cars home as close to the starting positions as you can. If you have an opportunity to make a move and go for it and things line up absolutely perfectly for you, the cards fall your way, then absolutely take it. But don't do anything unnecessary. Don't lick the stamp and send it, so to speak, in the final corner trying to pick up a few more points when you've already put yourselves in a position to have a nice haul. I mean, what is this now? 18 points if they finish in 5th and 6th and bring it home where they started? That would be almost 2/3 of their points haul of the entire season leading up to the Vegas Grand Prix. I don't think you just want to throw that all away.
Yeah, Ben, I agree. Just because we're in Vegas doesn't mean that, you have to go big or go home. I think that Williams right now they're in 5th and 6th. That's really amazing. And I think that their main goal right now should be to just maintain those positions and to, maybe go up or down a position, but nothing where they want to be on the podium because then they can really risk losing the points that they have. And I think that this would be great for both of their drivers to um do so well in one of the last races of the season. I think it's a great way for them to finish up. So I think that their main goal right now, the priority should be to just maintain those positions and to, watch out for the drivers behind them.
I think we've seen two things this year that point to what the strategy needs to be for Williams. One, we've seen that Alex Albon can keep almost anybody behind him with that straight line speed. The DRS train behind Alex Albon has no effect on his mental fortitude. He's been able to hold people behind him for lap after lap after lap. And that has been the secret a lot of times to scoring points, is that he doesn't fall back through the grid like the Haas tends to do when they find themselves up higher. The other thing that we've seen is this team DRS dynamic where you're dragging another team member along. We saw Russell calling for it with Hamilton at previous race. Not a team dynamic, but we saw Sainz and Norris pull that off a while back as well. And now you have Logan Sargent starting right behind Alex Albon. So if Alex can keep Logan in DRS to help defend himself from the rest of the grid behind him, that is going to be their secret weapon. However, that is only going to happen if they get through lap 1 line astern as they are now, be it the same place, be it a different position. And also the amount of pit stops, we really don't have a good grasp on how many pit stops there are. Pit stop strategy is going to play into this a lot. Where they go into the pits versus where they come out the pits could completely throw that game off. I don't think they can maintain that throughout the whole race. Williams is kinder on their tires than other cars have been, but this is something that has also fluctuated throughout the year. So it's really tossed up there. I think if we get to like the halfway point and they're still next to each other, then they've got a solid haul of points. But however chaotic this first lap gets, that might throw some reactive strategy in there. And they're going to need to roll those dice to keep the advantage that they've gained. They're going to need to be able to react quick if we get that chaotic start that we were talking about.
Excellent points there, Joey. I don't really have much more to add based on what you all have said. So Isha, I'll let you take it away with our brief World Rally Championship update.
Thank you, Kobe. Taking a look at the World Rally Championship, the first 2 days of the Rally Japan are now completed. Alfyn Evans leads Sebastien Ogier and Callie Rovanpera, a Toyota 1-2-3 right now. Ott Tanak is in 5th, so not in a position to overtake Thierry Neuville at the moment. Now, Neuville crashed, hitting a tree on Friday. 6 stages tomorrow will end the 2023 World Rally Championship season, and we will be recapping all of it on the Grid Live wrap-up tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And now I'll hand it over to Ben for MotoGP.
Thank you, Isha. And we're just wrapping up the sprint race, which started at the same time that this show went live here. So we'll give you all a brief update on that now. Luca Marini took the pole for Qatar's sprint and Grand Prix. The sprint race, like I mentioned, started at the same time we went on the air, just a few minutes or around noon Eastern time here. 3 riders crashed in the opening lap, including Ania Bastianini. Pecco Bagnaia and Jorge Martin were battling each other for position. Then Bagnaia fell to 5th while Martin was in 3rd. But by lap 4, Martin took the lead with Pecco Bagnaia still in P5. Martin took the win with Bagnaia still maintaining that 5th place result. So the points lead is down to 7 now between the two championship contenders. So let's bring in Joe Samaniego back into the show with us here. Joe, do you expect a similar outcome in tomorrow's race with these two championship contenders here?
I do. Martin, he really likes this track. He has a history with this track. I think he is motivated to go out there, get the win. And he's really showing a lot of aggression in the sprint race. Overall, he showed no fear racing against Pecco Bagnaia, making the moves. He got the lead because we saw Luca Marini and Fabio Di Gianantonio. The two didn't start battling for the lead. He came up, took it from them, and then just pulled away. He is riding, I think, very much on top of the game out of everyone in MotoGP, better than Pecco Bagnaia, in my opinion. Pecco Bagnaia, I felt he was just being a little bit more conservative once he was in fifth place, but still, he was being careful not to lose position to Maverick Vinales behind him. That would have cut down the lead even more. So overall, I think the tide is turning towards Jorge Martin's favor for the Grand Prix race.
Well, Joe, just to follow up, I understand our two championship contenders, Martin and Bagnaia, did make contact during the race. So, in your opinion, does that mean it's gloves off now in this championship battle here?
It does feel like it's gloves off now because right now you only have 3 opportunities on the track to overtake the lead. Pecco Bagnaia, 5th place, he only lost a handful of points, still has a 7-point lead. Or Jorge Martin, he knows he could go out there, he could win tomorrow, he could do everything he needs to do. But if Pecco Bagnaia is on the podium, 2nd place, 3rd place, most likely he's still going to have that lead right there, or it's going to be very down to like 1 or 2 points. Pecco Bagnaia, I think he knows he has to really be following Jorge Martin everywhere. Try to be right behind him. For Martin, he needs to work his way towards the front, and he doesn't care if he has to push Pecco Bagnaia out of the way like he did today. So overall, I think the gloves are off. I think we're going to see a very aggressive Jorge Martin in the next 2 races.
It looks like this championship will come down to the final race weekend of the year. And if it does, it's the first championship out of a grid ranking series aside from the NASCAR playoffs, which are guaranteed to come down in the last race of the year, where we'll see the championship battle come down to that final race. Obviously, not happening in Formula One. Max Verstappen clinched that a long time ago. So, Joe, let's move on to the Pick a Winner segment. Let's bring Formula One back into the discussion and each make our picks for the inaugural Vegas Grand Prix.
Yeah, pick a winner for all of our viewers, especially if you're tuning in the first time. This is your opportunity to comment in the chat room with who you think is going to win each race. Try to get on our leaderboard. Right now, 4 people are still contending in for the championship, but we have plenty of bonus points. If you're outside the top 10, additional bonus points for your first correct guess. If you're outside the top 20, another 2 bonus points for all your correct guesses. And if you're outside the top 30, even more bonus points. So you still have an opportunity to get onto the leaderboard. So one of the big things is comment with who will win each of the races that we're going to predict. So we're going to start off with Formula One. I think we all sort of have a good idea how everyone's going to pick. But Joey, starting with you, who do you see winning the Formula One?
Well, I see it in the comments already. So Adam on YouTube, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a Charles Leclerc win. I don't know if that's I think or I hope. But Ferrari has been really strong. It has not been the gap, the small gap that we've seen in the past. I really wish there were 2 Ferraris up in the front to be able to fight with Max. So it's going to be a one-on-one battle. But this is the best chance that Ferrari's had all year. And the only thing that's been holding them back has been that tire deg and the overheating of the tires. And this is the track where that might actually be a benefit. So I'm thinking, he's shown his pace on a 1 lap, and he might have the car to do it over the course of a race. So it'll be Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, I'd love to say Charles Leclerc. And if Carlos was starting in second right behind him, I think that there would have been a good chance that he could have taken the win. But considering that Max is going to be in second, and Max is usually about 25 seconds ahead of everyone else, I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna have to say Max Verstappen. Yeah, right there. He's gonna be the one to take the win tonight.
All right. You know what? I'm so far back. I'm not usually on the pre-race show. It's a pleasure to be here. I had to come on after the farcical insanity that we saw on Thursday night into Friday morning to give my thoughts on what happened here. But you look at the Pecco winner standings, I'm so far back at this point that I feel like I can afford to take some risks because it's not like I'm going to overtake Kobe for the championship or anything like that. What do we say could save this weekend? Something incredible, something very popular that isn't just a formality. Fernando Alonso is going to break his 10-year winless streak and find a way to win the inaugural Vegas Grand Prix. I don't know how he's going to do it. I know the Aston Martin has fallen way back from their performance at the start of the year, but that's going to be my pick for the win here. And if we somehow find a way to make that pick come to fruition, I think that'll certainly go a long way in saving the spirit of the inaugural Vegas Grand Prix and give us something to remember. So that's going to be my pick.
No, if that happens, we'll see a Vegas 30-year contract, on Monday.
Lifetime contract. I was definitely not expecting you to go with Alonso, Ben, but any other driver who could really get everyone excited winning would be Logan Sargent, but I think it would take something really crazy for an Alonso or Sargent to win this race. But I'm gonna keep going with the safe pick. I think Max Verstappen is gonna be that Vegas party pooper as we've talked about, and he's gonna end up winning again.
I think this is going to shape up to be a fun race. My big thing I'm looking at, turn 5 on that first lap, because turn 1, turn 2, up to 4, pretty slow. You don't have a whole lot running, but turn 5 is after that straightaway. Somebody could lock up the tires, mess up a couple folks' races. I think it's going to be very unpredictable. At the end, though, this is Pecco winner. I'm still in the top 6. I want to stay there, so I think I just have to go with Max Verstappen again. A near unanimous, but very interesting picks. Now, of course, since we've all pretty much picked Max Verstappen our easy favorite, the new game we've been starting just to see where everyone is. Pick 7th place, or you're in the chat room, comment with who do you think is going to finish 7th place. Joey, starting with you, who's going to finish 7th place?
I think I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso. He's starting 9th. The car hasn't shown a huge amount of promise, but I think there are drivers ahead of him that are going to drop back, and there's going to be the mix-up of Sainz coming forward. I think he will find himself a little higher than where he started. I know I was talking up the strategy that Albon and Sargent could have, and that Williams could be a good bet for 7th. But I also think back to the fact that they're the ones that were brushing the wall the most in FP2 and FP3, and even in qualifying. So I think that they're a potential, but I think that something's gonna happen with Logan in that wall. We saw Albon pop a tire on it. We saw Logan come very close multiple times. So I think their luck is going to run out with that turn 5 wall, and I think it's going to be Fernando Alonso P7.
I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton. I think he's got a good shot of going up a few places, and I think that some of the drivers ahead of him, like Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen, are going to drop down. So I think that Hamilton's got a good chance of being around that 7-point mark.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with Logan. I think that the Williams has certainly shown more pace than it has all year to this point. I think it's a track that really suits them. And again, I almost said Logan to win the race outright, but I figured out I'd maybe keep it a little bit more realistic. Although now when I think about it, he is starting further up the grid than Fernando Alonso. So who knows what's going to happen. But I think it would be a really feel-good story if, like I said, just try to finish about where you start. I know that would be a one-place drop. I guess he qualified 7th on speed, and Sainz is going to drop 10 grid places, so that promotes him up to 5th and 6th. So I know it's a little bit lower than where the Williams are starting, but if Logan Sargent can bring it home 7th, I think that would be a great day, great points haul for the team. That's going to be my pick, and it'd be a great feel-good story as well in his 3rd and final home race of the year.
And for P7, I'm going to go with the other Red Bull driver, Sergio Perez, coming to a street circuit. We think Sergio Perez, is going to be right up there with Max Verstappen since Checo tends to excel on the streets. But, so far it hasn't been smooth sailing for him in Las Vegas, hasn't been smooth sailing lately during the season. And I don't expect this race to go smoothly for him either. So it may be a little bit tougher for Checo to try to move up towards the podium. So that's why I'm going to go with him for P7.
For P7, so far 12 different drivers have finished 7th place this year. I think we're going to have number 13. I'm going to go with the driver that has finished 8th place twice and is in the top 10. Valtteri Bottas and the Alfa Romeo is going to be my pick for 7th place. Now, going back to picking winners again, we're going to MotoGP, the Qatar Grand Prix. Jorge Martin has won the sprint race, and now just to focus on their Grand Prix race. And one of the big things, of course, we're very excited to see what happens with this championship. Looks like it's going to come down to the last weekend. But Joey, starting with you for MotoGP, Qatar Grand Prix, who do you have?
Oh, this is tough. I tempted to say to stick with Pecco on this and just keep the Italian theme running. If I'm going to have Leclerc win the F1 race, then have Pecco for MotoGP. I was more confident in that before the sprint, but I think I'm going to stick with it. Yeah, Pecco for P1.
I picked Pecco to win the sprint on grid tonight, and I guess I might as well just stick to my guns at this point as well. So I will say he wins the future race, if you will, as well. That's going to be my pick on MotoGP.
I think I'm going to keep the good times rolling with Jorge Martin.
I'm going to go with Jorge Martin. After today's race, he's looking unstoppable. As long as he doesn't make a mistake, I think he has this wrapped up. Now, we're just about wrapping up. But before we go, encourage everyone, invest in the Grid Network through our Patreon. You will get some Grid Network stickers in the mail for you. So be sure to invest in us. Each and every month, we read your name on the air, and we'll thank you, of course. And you can also do a one-time investment through YouTube Super Chat. Buy me a coffee. If you're not watching us live, you'll see the YouTube thanks button. And if you want to give a cup of coffee or a thanks to a particular member of the Grid Network team, just mention it, and we will have that person thank them on the air. And of course, subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. We got a busy race weekend. We got Grid Life wrap up tomorrow to recap MotoGP, Formula One. Then we're going to have Grid Tonight, Wednesday. All the latest motorsports news from around the world. And then we'll do this all over again. One more race weekend for everyone at the Grid Network Grid Ranking with Formula One season finale, MotoGP, and the Supercar Series. For Ben, Joey, Isha, and Kobe, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.